I'm Stacy.
Hey, I'm Steph.
Welcome to Harnessing Your Power,
where we discuss everyday topics to break through the stigma and harness our power through self-mastery.
Tune in every Tuesday to join us in conversation as we dig deep into our minds and get closer and closer to our highest self.
Hi.
Hello.
We got to talking a little bit before this, and we have been talking about doing self-awareness for a little bit now, and we're finally on here, and I feel like it is the perfect topic for today. And since you went ahead and gathered the first question, I'll let you do the first question. But I'm really excited for this, so we can go ahead and get started.
I am really excited to talk about self-awareness today too, and I think what you titled it, Self-Awareness, A Journey, is so perfect because that's one reason why we kind of delayed this topic, is because we felt like we weren't quite at the place yet to speak on it. And then we realized that that's what self-awareness really is. It's like this constant journey. So that being said, someone said in the chat that their trading week is going very well. I love to hear that. Definitely want to celebrate that. Thank you for your interaction too. But to go ahead and get started with our topic of self-awareness, I did want to ask everyone who's tuning in if you want to drop your answers in the chat, and then Steph, if you want to go ahead and answer too. My first question is, do you think self-awareness is crucial for success, and why? So if you want to answer in the chat, you could just say yes or no. Do you think self-awareness is crucial for success?
I definitely want to see some answers before I go ahead and give my answer.
Yeah. Hello and welcome.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
I would love to hear why, but I love the hell yes. Yes. All right. So, yes, I do believe that self-awareness is crucial for success. But I don't think just self-awareness is crucial for success. And I think a lot of the times we become aware of some of our maybe not so great qualities, or maybe even some of our great qualities. But I think the most important part of what we do with that is what are you doing with that versus, hey, do we know all of our ins and outs? Cool, but are you using them to maximize your productivity, to maximize your, even knowing like, hey, these are my strong suits and these are not? How can we go ahead and just make sure they're good all the time? I don't want to get too deep into everything, so I'll like really quick because I feel like I have so much to say, but what about you? What do you think?
I know, it's like a loaded question. I just want to get into like everything I have to talk about the topic.
Me too.
I think it's absolutely crucial for your success. And I think it's actually something that we talk about in a lot of our different lives. I feel like we always bring up that awareness piece. So I feel like not only is it crucial for your success, but truly for your happiness. And actually one podcast I listened to and prep for this is all about your well-being. And they were saying that self-awareness is one of the biggest keys for your overall well-being. So not just success and happiness, but truly like the well-being of your life. But I agree with you, Steph. I think it's not just the awareness. That's definitely like the first step. And you really need that to know how to move forward. But the awareness by itself isn't going to do anything. It's really what you do with it.
I love that you mentioned in all aspects of your life, and you're talking about well-being, because that wasn't even anything that I was thinking about before we hopped on this. But I feel like it's huge because, I mean, so yesterday there was like a big bag of Skittles that was out, and every time I went past, like I was like, oh, I'll just have a little bit here and there. And I was very aware, hey, I don't need to be eating all of these Skittles. Like, but did I actually stop eating them? No, I kept having some every time I went past, and I feel like I didn't even think about that in a health perspective. how many times do we know, hey, we need to eat better, and then we don't? So I'm really happy that you said that, actually. I feel like
Yeah.
it.
And that's why I feel like self-awareness is such a key thing to everything in life, and also like such a loaded topic to talk about, because you really can take the perspective of self-awareness towards everything in your life.
Yes. Yes. So I'm just gonna go ahead and jump into some stuff, if that's
Yes,
cool. All
let's
right,
do
cool.
it.
So I think a big reason that, like, we always talk about self-awareness, and we always talk about being aware of just, I think obviously when we're talking about self-awareness, we're talking about the self. Hey, what are some qualities that I have? Why am I thinking this way? What am I doing? But I think so often, and I speak on this because I feel like I've been here. Hold on, I have some notes and I want to get these, like, actually these numbers correct, because sorry, I was reading the chat.
Everyone is just relating to you about
Yeah,
eating the candy.
I love it though. Relatability, I love that. But
Yeah.
so actually, a little side note, something that I kept seeing when speaking on self-awareness is help me be me, helping you be you. Like, that is your actual self-awareness. Are you aware of who you are at your core? And one, I thought that was super big, but also I was speaking to a friend that was over earlier today, and she was like, what's your overall goal with these lives that you do every week? And I feel like you and I always talk about how, empowerment and helping other people better themselves. But I think one thing, and we mentioned awareness on probably almost all of our lives. But that is one thing that I really love about this. And I started talking about the podcast and stuff. But I think a really big part of it is also increasing people's awareness and helping people be their true selves, their core selves all the way through, and being happy with that. So I just thought that that was like a really big thing on self-awareness. And I was going to go into some other stuff, but since I already mentioned it, do you think that being self-aware means that you can be exactly who you are? If that question makes sense.
Ooh, it does make sense. And first of all, that's a great friend asking your goal about something. Like, I know we've talked about like our vision with this and the podcast and everything, but truly thinking about like what our goal is behind each live is really interesting to get more intentional with it. Because I agree, it's definitely bringing more awareness to these type of topics and these like tools that everyone can use. What was your question again?
Do you think that increasing your self-awareness helps you be you, like your core you, or do you think it has nothing to do with that in your you, period?
Oh, no. I absolutely think it helps you be more of your true authentic self. And I think it also helps you continue to become your best self. Because I see self-awareness kind of like as a two-part thing. Well, about this, it's like a million-part thing. But I feel like when you have that self-awareness and you have this understanding of who you are, what your opinions are, what your values are, and also like what your standards are and how people act and stuff like that, you're able to reflect on your own actions and your own thoughts and see if that's in alignment with your values and with your standards. And then if it's not, that's how you're able to either decide to change your opinion and your standards, because maybe that's actually happened to me where I realize like I'm acting a little bit different than like an opinion I have, and I'm like, well, that opinion's actually wrong. So I feel like it helps you shift that perspective, and then also notice where you can start to change your thoughts or change your actions to act more in alignment with your core self. But also, one thing I was reading was talking all about how self-awareness is not supposed to be so much about well, their perspective was that it's not supposed to be so much about you in this moment right now, but self-awareness truly is a key to becoming your highest self or your best self. So if you have not only like your values of this moment in mind, but like your ideal self, like what your best self looks like, and that type of awareness, and you bring that perspective into the now and help yourself to have the thoughts and the actions that your best self might have.
I actually really like that. It's not even being aware of you, it's creating you.
Yes, literally, yes. It is.
Wow, I actually really love that. I'm glad I asked. So I was listening to something that had a very interesting take on self-awareness, because, and this is the reason I pulled up my notes, it was like actual numbers. I want to ask in the chat, and if you can just write a quick yes or no, do you feel like you are self-aware? Ooh. And you can answer too, Stacy.
I would say I feel like I am very self-aware. And that's actually something I want to get into a little bit more in a little bit, because other people always tell me I'm self-aware too. So that's like an interesting thing. But I definitely want to hear if other people think they're self-aware. And I want to say too, it's okay if not.
Yeah.
Like definitely be honest.
I think being able to say no is part of self-awareness.
It is.
I think it's a start. Mostly, that's a good answer. Like, hey, I'm there, but not all, like, you know.
Right.
I think to say that. Okay, cool. So the reason that I ask is because they did a study. Definitely feel like I'm very self-aware, but sometimes lose that when I'm in my lows. Thank you for the transparency. Oh. I love that. Well, you know, I love the transparency. So I was listening about the study, and basically 90% of people in the study believed that they were self-aware. So they ended up doing the study, and I love, Stacey, that you said that people tell you that you're self-aware, because the way that they did the study was not only do you have to think that you're self-aware, but using that same study that they were using, people around you that you were close with had to also say that you were self-aware. And based on all the data that they had on the actual person and the people that they knew, 10 to 15% of that group were actually aware. Wow. So the starting number was 90% and 10 to 15. That means that 80%, on a good day, 80% of people are lying to themselves about, and the way she put it was 80% of people are lying to ourselves about lying to ourselves. That was my same reaction. I was like, wow, like we can think that we are self-aware, but thinking isn't knowing. And I was just like, okay, cool. Where is she going with this? And she didn't have, there was no pattern in, based on that 10 to 15%, there was no pattern in age, industry, gender, anything. It was literally just people and their awareness. But one of the things that she also noted was people who are more self-aware end up feeling less in control, which I thought was very interesting. Less in control. It was less in control, more sad / depressed, less satisfied, and sometimes feeling less in control of either their lives or their relationships. And I thought that was very interesting, because I think one of the first things that me and you talked about when we talked about self-awareness was, cool, self-awareness is cool, but what about the action behind the awareness? And I know we always talk about the action behind it all, but how do we actually get there? How do we make that shift? And one of the big things that she had mentioned on making that shift is, are we asking why, or are we asking what? So really, like, instead of thinking why, was one of the good questions, why do I feel so terrible? What is making me feel so terrible? And how can I fix it?
Yes. Wow. I I love everything that you said. And I definitely have a few things I want to touch on, but I also wrote down an example of shifting a why question into a what question.
Yes.
And my example, instead of asking yourself, why do I fail at this task so often? You ask yourself, what are the circumstances in which I fail at this task, and what can I do to change them?
Ooh.
And they were talking about that it might not be that you're not good at that task, but maybe every time you go to do that task, you're hungry, or you're in a really loud place and you need quietness for this task, or whatever it is. So I think it's really interesting when we look at self-awareness as not just like our opinions or what we like, but truly breaking down every single layer of what makes us feel the best and what also makes us not feel the best, and how different situations can cause us to act our best or not our best. And it's interesting that your point was that sometimes people who are more self-aware can, one, feel in less control, because I think I can definitely relate to that. But it's interesting how you said they feel less satisfied, because I actually wrote down a point that increased self-awareness can lead to higher levels of satisfaction.
Well, it's not necessarily saying self-awareness leads to less satisfaction. It's self-awareness without the action leads to less satisfaction, because, and I think I speak on this from experience 100%. Cool, we can talk about all of our self-awareness, and sometimes we can be so self-aware yet put nothing behind it. And at that point, now you're just self-aware of, hey, I'm doing all these things, maybe not in the best way. And now you're just in this, like, now you're just aware, but not doing anything about it. And at that point, how are you feeling at that point? Right. How are you feeling about your negative qualities if you're not doing anything about them? And I think and I think that's why also I thought self-awareness a journey, because I think the beginning of a self-awareness journey is not fun.
Right.
It's really that look in the mirror. Like, who am I, and what does anything mean to me? Right.
And it only can truly allow you to have that positive growth and positive change by being fully honest with yourself. And one podcast I listened to even mentioned, like, acknowledging those, like, thoughts that you might have in the corner of your mind that you don't even want to share with someone else. Like, maybe you have an opinion that goes, like, against, like, social norms or whatever it is, but in order to really have self-awareness, you have to be aware that you have that opinion and actually accept it about yourself. So if you want to have an opinion that goes against the norm, like, that's fine, but really, like, feel strong in that, or again, like, or change it. So I think that's interesting. And I also think that thinking about self-awareness and, like, different situations can be really interesting too. Oh, your light went out. So, like, being able to also understand, like, your triggers or things like that. One example was this story of these people in a relationship, and this girl in the relationship was always arguing with her boyfriend, saying, like, you're so inconsiderate, all of these things, like, you don't even show me enough love. And she thought that it was her boyfriend who needed to grow and had all these issues. But through her own self-awareness journey, she realized that it was different insecurities she had herself, and that certain moments when, like, she would want physical attention and he wouldn't give it to her, it would trigger her into her past experiences or trauma or whatever it might be, and made her feel like he was intentionally withholding love from her. And so, like, her awareness of that entire complex, she was able to have that communication with her boyfriend, and, you know, also realize that it wasn't anything he was doing. She was just creating this whole narrative herself, But she was talking about it through the blog post that even though she had this awareness and things like that, like it would still trigger her all the time when the situation would happen. So it really takes a lot to sometimes break those like deep paradigms that we have, especially if it comes from like a negative past experience or trauma or something. But her self-awareness allowed her to at least understand. So every time that situation would happen, instead of getting mad at her boyfriend, she would be able to realize like, okay, like this is just in my head, like he's not meaning to do this to me. So she was able to stop having so many arguments with him and able to actually heal from her past trauma because of that awareness to it. But that's just like one specific situation. So I feel like it can get really interesting when we think about bringing self-awareness into all different situations. And one article is also talking about starting to pay attention to how we feel around different people. Not just like if we agree with what they're saying, but really like how do we feel when we're around them? Do we feel positive and energized, or do we feel like they're draining us? And that comes into the internal and external self-realization. I mean, self-awareness, self-realization, I guess it's the same thing. Which is kind of what you were talking about a minute ago with that survey of people thinking they're self-aware, but then others like not seeing that same thing in themselves. So that's like the second part of self-awareness, is understanding how others view you and also how you view others, and like that whole thing that can conspire from that.
So based on whether you're feeling like you are self-aware and how other people view you and your self-awareness, do you think that, and this isn't a question I prepared beforehand, this is just like genuine like question that I have now, do you think that communication is necessary for you to be self-aware? Like, does it need to be something that is spoken, or can it just be in your mind? And if not, what does, like, how would other people view you as self-aware if we don't communicate? Does that make sense?
Right. It does make sense. And I feel like it doesn't necessarily have to be communicated. I think a huge aspect of it is that vulnerable like conversation with yourself, or maybe journaling about it. But I think once you get to a certain point on your self-awareness journey that you really are more self-aware, you will naturally show it, whether or not you're like actually saying what happened. But I think one reason why people always tell me that, whoa, like you're so self-aware, like, wow, you have that awareness, is because anytime I'm kind of like venting about something, I'm always like jumping to like, I guess, my awareness. Like I'm trying to think of an example and I didn't like prepare one. But I don't know, like if something just like, let's just say something like annoyed me in my house or something, and I'm like, oh, like, I don't know, like the living room's always a mess. Like, and I'll feel like super upset about it, and I'll be like feeling very like emotional and all of this. But right away, I'll be jumping to, okay, why do I feel that way? Because I was raised in a really strict household that was always completely clean. And if I ever left a mess in the living room, I would get grounded and like in a lot of trouble. So that's like such a deep narrative that's in my head. But I feel fortunate that I do, he said not the living room. I do feel fortunate that I have that like level of self-awareness that I feel like kind of naturally I'm always jumping to like, okay, but why am I feeling this way, especially about like emotional things? But for me and my self-awareness journey, I'm definitely at a point of working to create action behind that, or to change my opinion. I think sometimes I'm good at the action part if it's something that I need to do. But that example that I gave, really, there's no action. I really just need to kind of change my opinion about it. Like, it's never that my living room is even that messy at all. Like, it's really not that serious. It's okay. And on a conscious level, like, I don't care that much. But there's just something deep inside of me that tells me I should be upset about it. So having that awareness of like, okay, now I need to break that habit or like break that thought but I'm still at this place where I don't really know how to sometimes fully break those thoughts when it's something that's so deep in your head. And that's actually one reason why I wasn't sure if I was ready to talk about self-awareness. But then as we were talking, we were like, no, that's the whole thing. It's like, it's literally a journey.
Yes. Yes. And I think that also goes back to what we were saying in the beginning. Cool. Now you've established the why. Okay. This is why, hey, I grew up in this kind of household. Now what is making me feel this, and what do I do to change it?
Right.
Switching that narrative of, okay, why am I feeling this way? You can know why you're feeling this way, but is it only going to make you more upset?
Probably.
Now, what do we do to change it, or what exactly? Because when you said, okay, maybe it's not that messy at all. Okay, but what part of it is the part that's annoying you? What triggered you to really feel that? And I think that is part of that journey as well. Like, how do we change those whys to whats?
Right. Right. I love that. I love that, changing that why to what, because I feel like that's such like a fundamental tool that you can just always remind yourself to, like, okay, the why, now the what.
Yeah. So when you were talking about an example earlier, when we were talking about, and like earlier in the day when we were talking about receiving feedback that we don't necessarily like, changing that, like really changing that thought of, why is somebody saying this about me or to me, versus, okay, what are they really saying? Do I believe this? And what can I do to move forward? And really like just getting past that. And I feel like that really is where that why to what like made that switch in my mind.
Yeah. Interesting. I want to go back to like one thing you said earlier too, when you were speaking on how we truly like create our reality, and how through like working on our self-awareness, we're able to really have more of an understanding of our thoughts and things like that. Because one thing I was reading actually was saying that you are not your thoughts, you're just the entity observing your thoughts. And once you even know that, depending on how you take it, but how they were attempting to steer it, is that actually should make you feel even more powerful and even more in control, because you're just the one observing these thoughts and you have all the power to change them and to make sure that they're in alignment with who you are and who you want to be. And they were just mentioning that the self-awareness really is the precursor to all of that type of self-development and personal development. Katie, they said, you are not your thoughts, you're just the entity observing them. And that allows you to have more power and control over them. And I just really loved that, because I'm really big into thought work, and I know I'm not my thoughts, but in a way, like, I don't know, I love thinking about how, yes, I create my thoughts, but your thoughts also kind of like create you. It's kind of like a cycle to me. And I feel like bringing self-awareness into that is how you're truly able to say, okay, even though it is like this cycle, like, no, it's me. Like, I'm creating that thought and I have the power to make that thought whatever I want to be. Yeah, that was that point.
No, I think I love how you said you create your thoughts, but your thoughts also create you. And really bringing that back in. I've never thought about being the entity viewing my thoughts. But I feel like we've talked about a similar concept on here before, and like really taking that control of, okay, I can have whatever thoughts I want. Like when you first said changing your opinion, one of my biggest thoughts was, can you change your opinion? And yes, you can, but what does it take to change that opinion? And I feel like from a very opinionated person, like the first second you said that, I was like, well, can you? And like, that's also where self-awareness comes back in. Like, why can't you? What do you have to do that? Is it something that really doesn't, when you explained, okay, do I actually have this opinion, or is it something that was rooted into me? The same thought process of, if you don't believe, I can't remember the quote about being programmed. Like, I don't know, but you know, do you believe that there's certain things that have been programmed into us, or are you?
Oof, that goes deep, because like, what even are we except everything that has been programmed into us? Like, oof, like, what even is an own unique thought? Someone teaches you how to talk. Like, wow, that goes deep. I wonder what babies think about before they talk.
No, that is so valid, because yeah, like, how do we even process those thoughts? Like, I feel like now when we have thoughts in our heads, you're thinking in words.
Right.
How do we think if we don't have words? And now maybe we've gone on to a different tangent.
We have. Katie said, or not letting pride keep you from change. Right. Like, having your pride stop you from even accepting that your opinion has changed. And actually, that is something that I can relate to a lot, because I, at one point, was a very, very, very vocal vegetarian. And I eat meat now. What? And that was actually a really big journey for me mentally. Like, part of me was literally thinking, like, ooh, like, am I allowed to, like, change my opinion on this? And also, like, what are other people going to think? Because I still actually have all the same values that I was preaching about when I was vegetarian, but I just came across new information and realized some things about my own self and my own health in this moment that caused me to change. But it is kind of scary being like, ooh, like, something I felt so strong about, now I'm changing.
I love that you brought that up, because I'm pretty sure that's one of the things that brought us to speaking, was you talking about being vegetarian. And I was honestly very shocked. I don't think any differently of you, but I was also very shocked. But I do think you do a very good job at explaining how your opinion has changed and why your opinion has changed. So I think that's very appropriate for this. And thank you for sharing that on live.
Of course. Another point I wanted to bring up, which we kind of touched on, but I wanted to go a little bit deeper about how sometimes you can have that self-awareness, but if you're not taking any action or doing anything to change it, you're going to stay stagnant, or it's even going to make your situation worse. So I was reading a lot about self-awareness being tied to your self-confidence, and how sometimes if you're too caught up in your self-awareness, it actually could cause you to have lower self-confidence. And I can relate to this so much. And I think this is actually where my self-awareness comes from. I think for me, it comes from actually being overly self-critical. And working through that with, like, self-love and things like that. But that's caused me to truly, like, analyze myself so much, which can, yes, be great, but it can also lead to not only, like, that lower self-esteem, but this girl, Elizabeth April, called it self-awareness exhaustion. And her podcast is very metaphysical. She was going very deep into different energetic things when she was talking about self-awareness, but she was pretty much saying that in every moment, like, there's so many layers. There's so many things, even in this moment right now. Like, I could be thinking about how I feel hot in this room, or how I hear sound out in my living room, or this conversation we're having, or all these people hopping on this live, or everything I need to do when I get off, or, like, there's so many things you could be aware about in this moment, that while, yes, we do want self-awareness, but if we're truly, like, caught up in just that self-awareness piece at every level of everything, it's just going to be overwhelming. We don't even have the mental capacity to go through that, and it's just going to lead to mental exhaustion, and probably inaction and you not do anything because you're just going to be like, whoa. And like I said, I can definitely relate to that because that's where I feel like I'm really at with my self-awareness journey. Can you relate to that at all, Steph? Or where do you think you're at in your self-awareness?
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that's actually exactly where I have been with my self-awareness journey. And I think, you know, you talked about, were you even ready to talk about self-awareness on here? And I think that's where I was at too. I was like, do I really want to talk about this right now? Because cool, being self-aware is cool, but what comes next? And I also, what is your mind focused on next? It all goes back to, when we talk about really harnessing your power, it all goes back to harnessing the power of our thoughts and mind. Because so there was a study on how, it's a 23-year-old study on how widows adjusted to being without their partners. And for the widows who were wanting to find out, you know, the meaning of their loss, like what really happened, what is the meaning behind my loss, they were happier 1 month later than the other widows. But 1 year later, they were actually more depressed than the other widows. And it's because, what is your mind fixated on? They fixated their mind on that meaning for so long that's everything that like played out in their lives. And I think that's where we really have to do that, changing that why to the what, or like changing the actual awareness to, okay, what comes next? What action take to make this awareness worth it? Because I genuinely believe that self-awareness without action, it does lead to less of everything. And when we talked about feeling less control, cool, you could be self-aware, but if you're not making the change, are you in control? I guess is the question there. Like, you can be aware of all these things that you want to change, but what happens when you don't make the change? If you don't make the change, let me change that wording.
It doesn't feel good.
No. And I mean, I feel like I can be on multiple sides of that, but currently in my self-awareness journey, there's a lot of things that I feel like I have been aware about that I'm like, okay, now it's time to make that change. Okay, now it's time to take that step. And I feel like self-awareness isn't always an easy journey. It's more, hey, is it worth it to be who I want to be that person that I'm creating and want to be at my core? And if that's truly worth it, which I 100% believe it is, why would we stop the self-awareness journey? This isn't like any, I don't know if you're on TikTok at all, but TikTok has a section of TikTok that they call Witch Talk. And they talk about like just a lot of metaphysical stuff, a lot of crystals, a lot of all of that. And they make like a lot of self-awareness jokes on there. I had one that I was going to say and I lost it as I was talking about Witch Talk. I might come back to that. I can't remember exactly where I was going with that, but I might come back to it. But that's just a little side note. Because I feel like being on there is what, I can't remember the exact TikTok, but being on there was a TikTok that had come around that made me realize, okay, cool. I'm aware of all these things that I want to change. Now, what's that next step?
Right.
What?
To the what? And I honestly, like, I just thought about this right now, reflecting on my own life. And I feel like when we have that self-awareness that we need to make a change for the better, and then we don't make that change, we're almost reinforcing that negative thought, like, about ourselves. Because that's something I've been really big into lately is, like, are you giving yourself the evidence to trust yourself?
Oh.
So one thing for me is I have been striving to wake up earlier. I'm over here in LA, and if you're trading and you're in the markets, you know, great time to be trading is pretty early in the morning in Eastern time, which is even earlier in the morning for me out here in LA. So on some days I really, really, really not only want to, but like need to get up at like 4 or 5 a.m. And it's something I've been struggling with for like 2 months. Since I decided I wanted to start waking up early, like almost every single day I just snooze my alarm and go back to sleep, and I have like no recollection of even snoozing my alarm. I tried putting my alarm like in the bathroom, so I have to get all the way up out of bed, and I'm just sleepwalking over there and turning it off and going back to sleep. And it just has started me like in this thought, like I'm never gonna wake up early, because over and over and over I'm showing myself that I'm not waking up early, and it's just almost at a point where now it feels even harder than it did when I first started. But what I actually realized about this specifically today, okay, what can I change so I can wake up earlier? And the big thing is go to sleep earlier. Like, I'm sleepwalking to turn my alarm off because my body truly needs that rest. Because I went to sleep at 1 a.m. last night. So, of course, I can't wake up at 4 a.m. Like, and I feel like that might just be relatable because I know everyone is always talking about needing to wake up earlier.
That is extremely relatable to me, at least. But also, oh, I wish I would have written this down while you were talking. I didn't want to interrupt you. When we talk about, okay, you started talking about self-awareness. What
the evidence that you give yourself.
Yes. So when we thank you for that. So when we talk about the evidence that we give ourselves, one thing that I had listened to, I want to say it was a podcast, I'm not 100% sure, but trusting when you said the evidence to trust yourself, one exercise that I had heard of that was giving yourself more evidence to trust yourself is tell yourself to do something and do it. Literally listen to the command. So even if it's something as simple as, okay, cool, maybe getting up early is something that hasn't been, working for you right now, but can you give yourself evidence to trust yourself that you're going to do what you say elsewhere? So maybe, hey, you already woke up. The first thing you're going to do is brush your teeth anyways. I mean, first, a lot of us, I hope. But can you wake up and be like, I'm going to brush my teeth, and then go brush your teeth? I'm going to hop in the shower, and then hop in the shower. But it's literally just that practice of saying it out loud and then doing it so that you feel the power behind your words. And feeling the power within yourself that, hey, I'm going to do what I said I'm going to do. That was just an exercise that I had heard. Wow. Really helpful for me, at least.
I'm so glad that you shared that, because this is like, I guess this is self-awareness. I often like focus on what like I don't get done, or the times that I don't do what I tell myself to do, that it's become such like a narrative to myself that like I just don't always do what I need to, or I like don't do what I tell myself. So that exercise of verbalizing it out loud, telling myself I'm gonna go do this, and doing it for little things like brushing your teeth or something that you know you're gonna do either way, that's amazing. I'm really gonna start doing that.
Change your narrative, change your life.
Yes, literally.
Rhonda says she's gonna do that too, so I'm excited for you, Rhonda.
Yes, I love it. I know we started a few minutes late, but we are coming close to the hour mark. So one last thing I did want to share is 7 different things that you can start doing to start building your self-awareness and increasing your self-awareness. And honestly, I feel like there's 7 things that everyone should just do all the time. So the first one is walking, and especially in nature. But they actually cited a bunch of research about how your mind is stimulated and how you're able to have a lot of new thoughts and come to new conclusions and new solutions while walking.
Wait, I don't know if it's just me, but I can't hear any sound. Can you hear me?
Yeah, am I back?
Yes, you're good. I could see you, but I couldn't hear any sound, so I did not get to. I don't know if it's just me though.
No, I think it was everyone. My phone's about to die. The second one is mindfulness, which you can practice through meditation and focusing your attention and on like one thing and focusing your thoughts inward to understand your outer state of being. The third thing is becoming a good listener and to actually step out of yourself. And I think that's very interesting that stepping out of yourself can actually help you bring more awareness into yourself. The fourth thing is coming across new ideas and new perspectives from other people or from reading something, from whatever it is, and having an open mind to that. The fifth thing is journaling and reflecting. The sixth thing is feedback from others, which you actually brought up earlier. So actually allowing that feedback from others to sink in. I mean, not too deep if it's not something that you feel is a truth about you, but to actually hear the feedback with an open mind and decide if it's something, yes, you need to work on, or if, you know, maybe they're just deflecting onto you or whatever it might be. And then number 7 is doing different like emotional intelligence and self-awareness quizzes. And there's actually a lot online, or different like journal prompts of things like that. And I know that we actually had a few we wanted to ask. So that first awareness exercise question that I'll ask you, Steph, and if anyone wants, definitely answer in the chat, but it might be a little bit of a long answer. So the first question is, when are you at your best?
So I actually love this question. And when we were looking at just different ways to talk about self-awareness and I saw this, I was like, I guess that's a great question to ask for self-awareness, because when are you at your best, like overall, and really looking early mornings. I actually was thinking like time-wise in the day, so I'm glad that you said that. But for me, I was actually having a conversation just talking about, I'm at my best when I'm eating good. I'm at my best when I'm working my body, like working out physically, like going to the gym, like doing the things that I know make me better. And I'm also at myself when I'm doing the things I said I was going to do. So even when we talked about that exercise earlier of, hey, I'm going to do this, like even that, I can see the difference in, oh yeah, I'm going to do that. And I remember I had taken like a success course in college, and one of the things they were talking about was goal setting and like how we set our goals. But instead of asking yourself, or instead of giving yourself the task, okay, like giving yourself a to-do list back to back to back, am I going to make time to do this? And when you ask yourself the question, am I going to make time to do this? It's kind of like you're challenging yourself. And that was something I realized really thinking about, when am I at my best? Like, am I sitting here and telling myself to do things, or am I asking myself, am I going to make this a priority today? But overall, it really is when I'm taking care of myself. How well when we talk about being that entity, looking at our thoughts, are you nurturing your thoughts? Are you nurturing this body that you have, and really making the most of it? And I think that's when I'm at my best, when I am nurturing myself, when I am doing those meditations. And am I always actively like doing that like every single day? And I can notice the pattern when I am consistent and when I'm not. So what about you?
I love how you said, like, when you're giving yourself a to-do list or things like that, you're asking, am I going to make time to do this? And am I going to make this a priority? That is also something I'm going to bring into my own life, because I am the best at filling out my planner and creating a beautiful schedule, even putting like breaks in there. And like, if you need me to plan your schedule, holler at me. I'm great at planning schedules. However, the day will come and I'll open my schedule and I'll be like, I'm not going to follow it. I don't want to do this today. I'm going to do something else, or whatever it might be. So bringing that awareness and that intentionality, am I actually going to make time for that? I love that. And I also agree completely with what you said. I feel like I'm definitely at my best self when I'm caring for myself. And I think a lot of people probably feel the same, because how can we even be our best self if we're not caring for ourselves. And it's also very obvious to me when I'm not. And I've actually been in a state the last few months where I haven't been. And I think that's been one thing that's definitely been impacting other areas of my life. You know, like I also love working out, and this week I'm back in the gym. Today's going to be day 3 right after this live, so we're good. But really getting back into those habits. And I feel like sometimes it's when we get so far out of those good habits that we realize, like, whoa, like we're in a bad spot. Like we really need to do that again so we can get back into a good flow. And I'm also at my best when I at least sit outside for 30 minutes a day. I noticed that's one of like the most impactful habits for me personally, because I love the sun and I love plants and I just love outside. So on like a conscious mental level, it makes me really happy, but then also like the physical health benefit of getting the sunlight and things like that. So that's definitely my top thing that makes me feel the best.
As we were both talking about like caring for ourselves, all I can see now is creating, like when you talked about you are the person observing your thoughts, like can we create a relationship with the person observing your thoughts and your thoughts, or like really nurturing the relationship between you and you?
Ooh. Wow.
That's really like what that question got me to. When are you your best self? When I nurture me.
Right. And I feel like in order to do that, you have to have some level of awareness into how to nurture yourself and into how to talk to yourself. What type of like thoughts can you have that will actually encourage you to do what it is that you want to do?
Yeah. Yes.
I love that.
I love that a lot. Wow. I'm glad that you asked that question on the live, because I feel like it forced me to think about it more on the spot. So, did you want to ask a second question from that? Did you want me to ask?
You can ask.
All right. Well, okay, I'm just going to go for what activities are you doing when time flies by? And I also have a reason that I really like this question, but I want you to just go ahead.
Okay. Side note, like I knew you were going to ask this question before we started this live, and I didn't even think about my answer. So this is
not mine either.
Fully on the spot. Like fun things. I don't know, like the first thing I think about, I can't think about something specific, but something like fun or something that I enjoy doing and that makes me feel really good. And being out in nature, honestly. Like
I was just gonna say, I feel like you almost answered that, but I wasn't gonna like give you your like force an answer onto you, so I didn't say that. But whenever I think time flies, all I can hear is the phrase "time flies when you're having fun." But I also think that's why I really like this question, because what are you doing when time flies? Now you can go back and think about what truly is fun for me.
Right. And that's where I feel like the self-awareness can actually lead to more satisfaction, because you can think about what actually makes you feel good.
Yes.
I love it. What about you? What are you doing when time's flying by?
Honestly, now that we're talking about this, I'm like, wow, I really, when you talked about not being as active in the gym, I feel like being in the gym helps time fly for me, or being with people that I care about, being with friends, being with family. But sometimes like, and I am very aware that I need to make the gym a very strong habit again. I feel like it's been like a very here and there. Okay, I'm still like kind of going, but not really. But I feel like time really does fly when I'm in the gym, and I genuinely love that. I forget that it is something that I genuinely love.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like, I don't know, This is the last thing I'm going to say, and then we can wrap it up. Going back to someone's point in the chat earlier when they said that usually they're really self-aware except when they're at their low point was interesting, because one thing I read was that a lot of times people won't actually reflect until something goes wrong. And I feel like bringing that self-awareness to when we feel our best and when time is flying by and what we truly enjoy doing can help us bring more of that into our life. And that's the reflection when you're like at your best. Like, who's having like the best time ever and is like, oh, let me think about what I'm doing so I remember to do this in the future. Like, you're not. You're just enjoying the moment, which is great. Like, definitely enjoy the moment, but maybe reflect on that later so you can bring more of that into your life. But yeah, that was interesting how someone in the chat kind of said the opposite earlier.
But also, if you know that you're not as self-aware when you're at your low point, are you aware, just not taking the action? I feel the same way, and I feel like when I'm at my low point, I'm not really as self-aware, but I'm extremely self-aware. I'm just putting myself down about it. And I don't think that makes anything better. But if you can be aware of the fact that, is it affecting your self-esteem? Is it affecting your growth? Can you go back and not let it affect your growth? And I think
yes. I love it. Self-awareness is such a cool thing. Like, when you really get into it, you're like, whoa, like, who am I? What do I think? What do I like? Like, it's amazing.
Yes. I'm aiming to. Yes. No, but I know we are at our hour mark. I know we had started a few minutes late. I don't know what our actual hour mark is, but thank you for unpacking self-awareness with me. And I think this is also one that we can really unpack now. And we both mentioned that we weren't sure if, like, not sure, but like at one point when we brought up this topic, we weren't sure if we were ready for it. And I think this is one we can unpack again when we're a little further in our self-awareness journeys. But as always, I appreciate you unpacking every topic with me, and I appreciate everyone who interacted today, because I feel like we had a lot of interaction today, and I thought it was really good.
Yes, absolutely. I actually am really excited to revisit this topic sometime in the future and be able to talk about when we're at the next part in our self-awareness journey.
Yeah.
So that will be really exciting. And yes, definitely thank you everyone who tuned in live with us and interacted in the chat. Definitely keeps it fun, and I appreciate all of you. And also thank you to anyone watching this recording on Instagram, on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, because we are everywhere.
We would not be here without you. So thank you guys, and see you next week.
Bye. See you next week.
Bye.